on the front lines of the information war. De-Hypnotize!
There are, of course, those who do not want us to speak. People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. Ideas are bulletproof.
Welcome to the De-Hypnotize broadcast. I am your host, Mizzra Revolt. And today is the first installment of this here De-Hypnotize. And I think I'm going to just do a free-for-all here. I got some good topics coming up for future broadcasts, such as the old ways, the history of Revolt records, what does it mean to be free, breaking the sometimes invisible chains of conditioning and servitude, freeing your mind, deprogramming, positive manifestation, understanding logical fallacies, the case for lost civilizations and hidden human history, the falsehood of debunking, activism at the local level, building the society, the communities that we would like to live in and that we would want to raise our children in. Because, newsflash, this one here, it ain't it. The surveillance state control grid. We're talking about things like the Patriot Act and the Great Reset. And then finally, for number 10, we will be talking about indoctrinating the youth. The fascist prison school system of public schools. And are there better ways to teach our children than what they're taught in the indoctrination camps that we call the fascist prison public school system? And I've got some funny anecdotes about my time in the fascist prison school system, which I will discuss, of course, in the episode about the school system. So, without further ado, let's get into this first edition of the De-Hypnotize broadcast. And where do we want to take it? Let's start out by saying that during the winter solstice of 2020, you were able to view what was called the Great Conjunction, which you could see with your naked eye Saturn and Jupiter, as well as Mars and the full moon, which was an amazing experience. And I believe it only happens once every about 400 years, so we're very privileged to have experienced that if you're one of those who knew about it and witnessed it. But this goes into a larger theme, and that is the cyclical nature of the universe, and specifically our solar system. And there's a lot of credence led to the magnetic fields that these cycles create. So basically, a quick breakdown of that would be that the Earth is transitioning currently in between the Sun and the magnetic pull from the Sun and directly in the middle of the sun and the gas giants who have their own magnetic fields. And so what's going to happen during that time? There's a lot of resources that are available that you can look into to get more information about this, because I certainly don't know nearly as much as, say, David Dubine from Adapt 2030 knows about these magnetic fields. Although I do write about it, and I touch on that in the song Spiritual War. It's going to be on the new album, The Old Ways, and that is one of the first 2 singles released by OL MZRA. And so when you think about all these things, and from my perspective of being a practicing pagan, that's not to say like a blood sacrifice ritual, bloodthirsty, murdering, psychopath that you might envision as a pagan being, but it's just it's just a connection to the natural world, and having reverence for the way that our ancestors lived, and getting back to the basics of what is essential for human life in an age where we're stuck in this industrialized landscape or cityscape of this technocracy, basically, and there's a lot of different branches we can go, different avenues we can go down when we get talking about that stuff. So anyway, a lot of you that are subscribed to Revolt Records on YouTube will know that I have put out a couple videos where I'm reading portions of a book that I'm writing, and those would be called Don't Say I Didn't Warn You and The Warning Signs Were All Around Us. And this is a theme that I talk about in The Old Ways as well, where there's a lot of things going on that if you have the eyes to see it, then it's quite alarming. But if you don't have a good understanding of history and put it into perspective for what's happening right now, you might not see it. Or if you only get your information from the mainstream propaganda news networks, then you might have fallen for the trap, or continued to believe in these absurdities of this current narrative that's being pushed. So it's kind of funny to me that some people will be so zealous, that they'll be so fanatical about these things that were told to them through these people that are clearly just reciting a script and pushing an agenda. And they've got this disconnect with their logical mind, to where they've been put in a perpetual state of fear, and their rational mind shuts down, and they act on only the very low vibration of letting that fear run their life. But if you look throughout history, this has been used for a long time, this tactic, and it's referred to as the Hegelian dialectic, the problem reaction solution. And it's not like there's no precedent for super scary cooties that people are being hysterical about right now, right? I mean, there's many instances just in the past 20 years where this same type of thing has happened. And of course, the Corbett Report does a great job of showing that from way back. We even a lot of the videos from a decade ago, like a bioterror false flag and know your vaccines. And yeah, I'm using a code there, but you know what I'm saying. So there's very good demonstrations, and you can go to a lot of different sources. But see, the problem is that they've got this thing now where they're trying to crack down on what they call misinformation, the powers that be. Right? So, but I think people forget that as a sovereign, self-owning individual of adulthood, that you should be able to look at information from all different angles and then decipher that and come up with your own conclusion, or what you believe holds the most weight or resonates as the most true with you. But what the powers that be are trying to do now is they're trying to, or they're not even just trying, they are silencing any alternative voices. And even when this comes to doctors, like, they will revoke someone's medical license, and this doctor won't get any more funding from the medical establishment anymore because they showed evidence that contradicted the official narrative. So this is a very big problem, and I'm sure that anyone that's coming over from the Revolt Records channel already knows that this is a very big problem, and I've been talking about this for a long time. And so what I want to do here is present a positive alternative, that people that think the way that we do, that this type of bodily autonomy idea and being able to decipher information and come up with your own conclusions, we should be able to do that, and it should be looked at as something positive, not as something that is detrimental to society, because I personally mostly reject the constructs of the current society that we have. And now that's not to say that there are a lot of great resources that we can use to make our lives easier, but also there's a fine line between when you give up a certain amount of your own sovereignty or your personal liberty for convenience or for a false sense of security, and that can lead to being a slave. Yes, you heard me correctly. A lot of people that get caught in this trap are essentially slaves. They don't realize that they are, but they are, and that can come in many different forms. And so once you realize this, you can break out of your bondage, and then you'll feel liberated, you'll feel empowered, because you're making your own decisions. You're not doing it by proxy or having someone on the television tell you what you should think or what you should do. Because, I mean, look at it. You can go do basically what you want if you're not hurting other people, stealing things from other people, the basic things that all humans should live by, these codes of conduct that are pretty much inherent to people that possess morality and that are not complete psychopaths or sociopaths or, you know, this type of thing. So this is a very good thing that a lot of people have been become awake to these things. They see that there is something wrong, and it's not just the events of early 2020 till now, but long before that, there are a lot of us that knew that there was something wrong with the way that this system is set up and who is granted certain powers over other people when we're all supposed to be free, right? So you are not free when you as a person, a good person, have limitations on that freedom that other people that are not good people, they're not morally just, they contribute to mass murder, mass extortion, and coercion, deception, and some stupid laws that throw someone in a cage for being a peaceful person, and the state comes and initiates violence against them with their jackbooted thugs that somehow have more freedom than the rest of us. Yet when you look at it from the standpoint of some people would say it's okay that you use violent force to detain someone that has went and murdered someone or went and broke into someone's house and stole a lot of things, right? You might say that it's justifiable to take that course of action, but a lot of the stupid laws that we have, not just in America, but in countries all around the world, that allows the state and the police force to initiate violence and basically kidnap you, under threat of being shot to death or tased or pepper sprayed or whatever, because you were doing something peaceful that wasn't bothering or harming anyone else, but that somehow they're justified to do that to you because some people wrote on a piece of paper that says you're not allowed to do this. And from an ideological standpoint, that's not justified. It's not okay. And people who condone that kind of behavior need to really, in my opinion, reanalyze why they would support something like that. Because it doesn't do any good for those of us that are, living our lives in peace. So that's where this whole argument of limited government and protecting personal liberties that Ron Paul speaks about a lot comes in. And then you can even take it farther and say that, there is a very good argument to be said that government is organized crime. Just flat out. Government inherently is an organized group of criminals that have special privileges that subjugate the rest of the population, which, by the way, outnumber them drastically, that they are allowed to victimize and oppress the other, wide margin of people that are under the government's thumb, so to speak. So how would you rationalize that? Where's the argument to be had to say that this group of people, which, by the way, collectively as a whole has murdered more people than any other group or institution throughout history? Death by government, democide, has killed more people than anything else. So I think the argument there is pretty clear. That it's not okay for a certain group of people, just because they have a title or a badge or some words on a piece of paper, says they have the right to commit violence, murder, extortion, i.e. taxing you on your income, which, I mean, if you know about the Federal Reserve and the IRS and that kind of thing, it is extortion. It is coercion to pay them their fee of what you work hard for by threat of force, of violence, and to be thrown in a cage. Right? So that's no different than the mafia trying to extort money from people on their city block. So, and we can get into that a lot more in a later broadcast. But let's see, what should we talk about next here? Well, I think a good topic is The God of Fear, which is a title of a song on the upcoming album. And a lot of people really need to put this into perspective for the people who can't see it. It's our duty to point these things out to them. So, and this is why I named the track Corona Cult, is because there are people that are willing to go against the convictions that they believe or that they profess to believe, such as being a Christian or, you know, whatever denomination of religion that you are. They will be coerced or tricked into taking part in a ritualistic practice that is in direct contradiction to the religion that they claim to be adherent to, right? So that could be whether you want to view wearing a piece of cloth over your face as something that the religion of Islam does to oppress women, right? Because she's the property of her husband, right? And no other man is, you know, allowed to lay eyes on her, lest she might tempt him to be taken by a sexual desire for her, you know. To me, there's really no difference, you know, in the symbolism that you see there, right? Regardless of all the different scientific studies that show the uselessness of wearing a piece of cloth over your face and the possible detriment such as hypoxia, bacterial pneumonia, and the list goes on. But the symbolism of it has been used to oppress people for a long time. You know, this idea didn't just come up in the year 2020. And you can go and you can look at, you know, like there's a scene in the movie Django Unchained where they do that to him. There's a lot of pictures that you can find online of people that are treated this way because it's being used to symbolize their subservience. And then, of course, you can get into the whole religious confliction of practicing Christians, so-called, that are just willing to take the mark of the beast. You know, I mean, I'm pagan, but I feel bad for these people that are willing to do this and that can't see it. You cannot buy or sell, you cannot trade, you cannot travel, you'll be fired from your job. I mean, this is This is clear-cut revelations. So I that's something that I would really like to keep exposing and pointing out to people, that, you know, it's not right, and that it is a very big confliction and a contradiction that goes with that, because it's like, which religion do you favor the most? Do you favor your Christianity, or your your Islamic faith, or your pagan faith, or your Buddhist faith? Or do you favor the Corona cult, and do you favor these other systems of belief that would take precedent over what you claim to truly believe in your heart and your soul, that that this is who you identify as far as your religious belief? So I just would like people to think that through a little bit more and put it in that perspective, because I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense when you look at it that way. If you believe that you're a spiritual being, and that it doesn't matter what someone does to you here, because whatever God you believe in, or gods you believe in, is gonna, you're gonna be in their favor if you stick to your convictions. Why give up so easily? If that's truly what you believe, why give up so easily? But that goes again back to the limited amount of information and this indoctrination that is being pushed through the mainstream media, which, I say it all the time, but we know that it is nothing more than legalized domestic propaganda. So, what can we do? It's crazy, There's all these psychopaths, these billionaires. They're trying to put implantable technology into our bodies, and they're buying up the farms. They're deliberately crashing the economy. They're creating more fiat money out of thin air, devaluing the dollar, causing the price of everything to go up. They're pulling all these cyber attacks that I said would happen, but it's not that I just have a crystal ball. It's that if you watch what these people say, things like the World Economic Forum and Dr. Gates and all these others, they will tell you what they're going to do next. So lo and behold, 7-8 months later, boom, it happens. All these cyber attacks. And they're attacking our food supply. So they're attacking our right to grow our own food, to have our own livestock, but they're also attacking the monetary system that will collapse eventually, because it's not sustainable. You can't just keep printing money and devaluing the dollar whenever some engineered crisis comes along, so that you can get closer to your Agenda 2030 and zero carbon and all these other, nicely laid out and prepared and scripted and calculated events that they want to happen, and that they make happen because they have the most money, power, and influence in the world. And psychopaths rise to positions of prominence because that is the way their brain operates. That is their motivation, is to be a tyrant, to have control over other people. So what can we do? Well, there are a lot of places that you still can grow your own food, and especially in America. and you can have your own livestock in a lot of places still. You just got to look up your local municipality code and all those other laws that these brilliant overlords decided to put on a piece of paper, so us as the, the good subservient, population of the people, we must adhere to these laws, right? Because it's the greater good, as they like to say. But so yeah, there's limitations on how many chickens you can have, or you're not allowed to collect rainwater, or, it's really bogus in my opinion. But do it to the extent that you can. You can still grow a lot of fruits and vegetables in most places in America, and you can still have little livestock like chickens and stuff like that. And learn to do that, or go hunting and learn to skin and gut an animal and cook it, and all these things. Those are some good solutions to the attack that's being waged against our food supply. And so back in December of 2018, I have a video on the Revolt Records channel. The government under the Trump administration released a report that said prepare for infrastructure collapse, right? So I was talking about that back in, I think, January of 2019, something like that. So this is very important because they haven't let up on that. A lot of people might have forgotten that they were told to stock up supplies for 6 months and prepare for power outages for 6 months, and that the infrastructure collapse whole deal. But it goes back again to people having short-term memories, or just being too focused on the plethora of distractions that are given, to where they lose focus and they lose their sense of clarity in being able to identify things when they happen, or to prepare for them in advance, because they know that eventually it will happen. So I mean, stock up on storable foods, these types of things. Any other resources that you're going to need. Think about what would you need if you lost power for an extended amount of time, things like this. So, and I would also like to talk about why do people keep believing that people that murder other people, or that murder animals unnecessarily, I don't understand how people allow other people to get away with this type of stuff. Like, for instance, in Australia, the government in New South Wales murdered a lot of rescue dogs because they didn't want people disobeying the lockdown and curfew and all this medical martial law bullshit. So they murdered innocent dogs. I mean, this is the extent that these psychopaths will go to, and their army of order followers, the ones who enforce for them, apparently there's a lot of police officers and military men and women and that are they're not having this anymore. They don't want to support this because they're good people and they see that this is wrong and that you're not going to save anybody's life from catching cooties by going and killing a bunch of innocent dogs. I mean, that's completely delusional, and that those people have a mental illness. They are the ones who are literally sick. They shouldn't be the ones making the laws and enforcing the laws and doing these types of things. So I mean, I feel bad for the people that are living in these countries where their governments are pushing this so hard, you know. Like someone doesn't want to wear a face diaper in Ireland, so they throw the lady in jail for 3 months. That is complete insanity. And that's part of the mass psychosis. You know, it's mass hysteria. And I'm glad there's a lot of people that have become aware of this, you know, and that are willing to stand up and say, no, this is not right. Because when you grant authority over your liberty, your right to live your life the way you see fit, when you're not hurting other people, when you grant that false authority to someone else over your life, you might as well just get slave tattooed on your forehead, because you need to develop a backbone, really, if you're going to act that way. I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, I mean, and you can see it. Like, there's the people that dutifully follow these nonsensical rules, and then there's the ones that don't, and they're still going to the same places. The only difference is one person wants to live free, and the other person is resigned to living as a slave. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. And there's so many double standards, too. Like, I mean, look at all the crazy riots for BLM in the summer of 2020 compared to, you know, anyone that protests against a lockdown or a mask mandate or, you know, the hottest new injectable, you know, and the papers that are required for you, and this is, you know, synonymous with Nazi Germany, you know, where you had to show your papers to go around everywhere. I mean, that's what this is. That's what I'm saying. Is like, people can realize it if they stop believing the people that are so blatantly lying to them about these things. You know, if they just take the time to step back and analyze it and look at it from a different perspective. The government does not have your best interest at heart. And of course, I'm going to get into that more in future episodes. And in the new album, I talk about that a lot. So, unfortunately, Australia is a penal colony once again. But it's up to them, you know. It's up to those people to practice non-compliance. And if the people, came together and stood together and did not falter from their convictions that they want their freedom, and that they're not going to let these tyrants who clearly have an agenda behind all of this. It's not because there's some super scary cooties going around. There is an agenda to enslave us, and that is why they're doing what they're doing. So unless you stand up to the tyrants, they're going to keep oppressing you. But we can do it in a non-violent way, because once we do it in a violent way and we go out rioting and stuff, we fall right into their trap, because they've got the superior weaponry and they've got their goons over there that are just willing to kill you, you know, and they'll get off on it because they're in a separate class and they have a separate set of rules than the common people do. And if you haven't realized that by now, I mean, I don't know, how delusional do you want to be? Because that's the way the world works. So it comes down to, do you want to be the master of your own destiny? Do you want to be in control of your own life, or are you willing to just do whatever some quote-unquote authority figure tells you? Because that's not what freedom is. And you don't allow yourself to be coerced into doing something just to get freedom, because that's not freedom at all. You don't have to be tricked or coerced or extorted or put under threat of violence into doing something to get back a little bit of your freedom, because that's not how freedom works. So, and they're going to keep this ball rolling. And the more people that wake up and that just say enough is enough, no, I'm not doing this. You guys are delusional. You guys are hysterical. You're not acting rationally. And I'm not going to be a part of it. The more people we can get to behave in that manner, because we already know that we're armed with the truth. You know, we have the empirical evidence showing why we believe these things that we believe about this whole situation and then the whole world around us. So it's ultimately up to us. Like I say, you either want to be a slave or you want to be free. That's it. What's more valuable to you? What are you willing to sacrifice? Because those who came before us sacrificed quite a lot for us to be, quote unquote, guaranteed our inalienable rights. So will you just give them up without a fight? Or will you hold strong, weather the storm, and do what is necessary to maintain living your life in a free and peaceful and prosperous manner? So that was kind of just shooting off the hip, so to speak. Just, you know, have a couple notes here that we kind of use as talking points, but in the next one I'll try to stick to the same topic throughout the entire broadcast. But I kind of touched on a few things there that I think people will resonate with, and if you liked it, there will be more to come. Do all those cool things, subscribe and like, and so this is gonna be on the old YouTube. Screw YouTube. But I'm gonna put it on Odyssey and Spreaker soon as well. So until next time, thank you for tuning in to the De-Hypnotize broadcast. I'm your host, Mizzra Morris. Peace, y'all.
In direct opposition to these enemies of free humanity, the subservient sheeple suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, who wear their oppression like a badge of honor.